Hey folks, now that we've given you the overview of how we think you should be hunting elk every year, because you can get an elk tag every year, we're going to go through state by state based on what the calendar has for the due dates of each. And the very first state is always Wyoming, at least for this year. Rumor is next year Wyoming's moving to a May deadline. But for this year, 2019, know that the deadline is January 31st. If you miss that deadline by some strange sort of events, don't miss it, but if you do, you can still get a point. Starting in July, I believe it's July through September, they have a point-only purchase option. So we're going to walk through how we use the goHUNT Insider to research, apply, and hopefully draw tags in Wyoming. We're talking the best draw odds, big strategy articles that are so in-depth. It'll take you a long time to read them, but they're really, really helpful. More in-depth than anything that you can find out there. Then you have what's called the filtering system, where you can look at each unit and say, all right, I want this unit that has X percentage of public lands. I want units that have this percentage of draw odds for me. I want a unit that has maybe a range of trophy potential, and obviously if it says trophy potential of this, it doesn't mean that's what you're going to shoot, but it's known that, hey, you have a likelihood that that could happen. So you can filter by all kinds of things in the goHUNT Insider system. This whole video series is brought to you by the goHUNT Insider, and know that what you see me using here, you can get that same thing. Go to goHUNT.com and click on the button that says Insider, sign up and use promo code RANDY, and you're going to get $50 of store credit. Absolute mad money in their gear shop. So, very first thing I do with every state that I apply for is I go to the goHUNT.com Insider and I read the strategy articles. Right here, I have the Wyoming 2019 strategy article up in front of me. And the very first thing I want to do is know what's new for 2019. Well, a couple things are new to Wyoming, but also new to the Insider. This is going to be a game changer, I think, for those who have the Insider service. If you don't, you're not going to have access to this information. No other service has it. And what it is it tells you how many applicants there were by each point level. Now, when we get into more detail of Wyoming, you'll understand why this is really important information to have. In the past, all you could rely upon is Wyoming said, well, anyone with less than 7 points didn't draw. Well, what if you're at 4 points and there's only one person ahead of you? Well, guess what? Maybe you could draw that year with 4 points because there's only one other person ahead of you. Most people go under the assumption that if Wyoming, the Game and Fish site says nobody with less than 7 points drew, everyone thinks that all the other applicants had 6 points. And so they don't even look at that if they have less than 7 points. Well, this information is serious good nuggets here. This is going to change my personal application strategy. I've been spending a lot of time looking at what are these point totals at each level, because there's a couple of units now that I know even at low points, I might have a chance of drawing. The other thing that is specific to Wyoming this year, you cannot buy your point at the time you apply. I went in and did my Wyoming application for my son and my uncle last night. You can't even apply for your point now. It used to be you could buy your point and check the box and say, I want to pay extra and buy my point if I don't draw. Well, now you're going to have to go and get your point in the point period, they call it. I think it's July through September. The other part, and this is the unfortunate part, is Wyoming this year is adding a 2.5% credit card transaction fee. That's a lot because Wyoming makes you pay the money up front. So if you want to apply in Wyoming, and we'll get into the special pool and the regular pool, you got to give them your credit card and you got to pay everything up front. And now on top of that, you're paying a 2.5% transaction fee. If you don't think you have a chance of drawing, do you want to pay that 2.5% on the whole purchase price of the license? Or do you just want to say, you know what, this isn't my year, I'm going to apply for a point, and I'll wait until I have enough points before I actually apply to save all these transaction fees? Some people say, well, I'll just send in a paper application. Not in Wyoming, you won't. Everything has to be done online in Wyoming. So you have to have your application in by January 31st, and you're going to find out by late February sometime. Usually it's the last week of February, depending on how it falls, anywhere from the 20th to about the 25th. So you find out before a lot of the other draws are even open, or before the other draws even have their deadline. So the only state that will already have a deadline passed by the time Wyoming announces their results would be Arizona. So you can apply in Wyoming if you don't draw. You're like, well, I still have Utah, I still have Nevada, I still have Montana, I have Idaho, I have Colorado. So that's one of the beauties of having this early notification from Wyoming, is it fits into your strategy of how am I going to do that this year. Also, you're going to get your money refunded before some of those other states have their deadlines. So if you don't draw in Wyoming, you can use that refund from Wyoming to be part of your pool of money that you apply in, say, New Mexico or Colorado or whatever it is. One of the things I'm going to talk about here is Wyoming has a very interesting system of how this works. And in some of our past videos about Wyoming, we went into extreme detail about how the Wyoming draw system works. And nothing has really changed as far as how it works. And I'm going to give you a brief overview here. But understand, Wyoming splits all non-resident tags into two different application pools. 60% of the tags go in what's called the regular price draw. And it's the regular draw, it's at a lower price. 40% of the non-resident tags get put over into what is called the special pool or special draw, and it's a much higher price. So the very first thing you have to decide is, do I want to save some money and go in the regular draw and know that 60% of the tags are there? Or do I want to pay extra and go into the special draw and hopefully have some better draw odds? And let's assume this unit has 100 tags. So 60 of those tags are going to go over into the regular draw, 40 are going to go to the special draw. So how then does Wyoming split the 60 tags that are in that regular draw? Well, here's how Wyoming does it. 75% of all tags in any pool or non-resident tags are allocated based on who has the most preference points. So if you have 10 points, I have 4 points, you're going to get that tag before I do. The other 25% of the tags is allocated based on a random draw. So first thing Wyoming does is it says, all right, of these 75% of the tags, let's go through and allocate all those based on whatever points everybody has. And anybody who doesn't draw in that part of the process, we're going to move them over into the random draw, and everyone has a chance again in the random draw. So think about this. There's 100 tags, 60 of them go over here to the regular draw. Now that 60 gets split 75%, 25%. Or in other words, 45 of those tags are going to get allocated based on who has the most points, a true preference point system. The other 25%, or 15 of those tags, are going to be awarded just in a random manner. Then the same thing happens over here in the special draw. Okay, 40 of those tags go in the special draw. 75%, or 30 of them, get allocated based on preference points. And 25%, or 10 of those tags, get allocated based on just a random draw. So you have to look at a couple things. You have to look at what are my point totals and what preference point total was required to draw in the 75% or the preference point part of that draw, and what was the random draw odds. Because everybody who doesn't draw in the preference point round goes over into the random. So there's some units that have pretty darn good random draw odds. And the way that you find that out is through the Insider. It has all of that information. Insider has the best draw odds. There's nobody out there that has invested as much time, effort, and energy in giving you the best draw odds as the Insider. So that's the overview of how Wyoming works, right? You got to decide right away, do I want to stay in the less expensive regular draw, or I want to go in the special draw? One of the things you have to consider with Wyoming is a lot of these units have wilderness areas. We're talking designated wilderness areas, federally designated wilderness areas under the Wilderness Act of 1964. If you want to hunt in one of those designated wilderness areas, you need to hire an outfitter or have a Wyoming resident accompany you and serve as your quote-unquote guide. That right away causes you to say, well, like Randy, he's going self-guided. That eliminates a lot of the units around Yellowstone Park, eliminates some of the units that have predominantly wilderness area. That then brings me to another fork in the road. Am I comfortable hunting around grizzly bears or am I not? And here the Insider, the strategy article, shows you a map of where there's a prevalence of grizzly bears and where there's not. And I get it, a lot of people are not comfortable hunting in grizzly country. Nothing wrong with that. That means you're looking at most of the rest of the state, the Bighorns, central Wyoming, southern Wyoming, maybe one of the units over in far northeast Wyoming. Just understand that in Wyoming, that's part of what you got to deal with. Your draw odds often are going to be better in areas that have grizzly bears just because a lot of people don't like messing with them. Here's the fees. This is the part where things get a little expensive in Wyoming when you look at these non-resident fees. Full price elk in the regular draw, $759, $15 application fee, so $52 point fee. So if you're going to apply, you got the license fee of $692, you got the application fee of $15, and you got the preference point fee of $52. You're looking at a total of $759, and then on top of that, you get to add a 2.5% transaction fee. Over here in the special, this is the more expensive draw. Look at what that costs. There's a $576 difference between the regular price and the special price when it comes to elk. Ouch. Now, I have a difference here for youth. So youth, the actual license is $275, the application fee is $15, and the preference point fee is $10 for kids. So your total there is $300 for a kid. So just part of what you got to do, you got to decide in Wyoming, am I willing to pony up that extra money for what might be just slightly better draw odds? The thing to know that if you're bull elk hunting, you're hunting antlered animals, you're going to be applying for a type 1 or type 2 tag or a type 9. Type 1 is usually the early season, type 2 is usually a November season, type 9 is always archery only. And be careful, there's some units in Wyoming where you have to actually apply for the type 9 tag in order to archery hunt it. Some of the other units, if you have a type 1 or type 2 tag, you can come and hunt during the archery season. And if you don't fill your tag in archery season and you have a type 1 or type 2 tag, you can come back and rifle hunt it during the rifle seasons for that type 1 or type 2 tag. That's cool. One thing to think about is Wyoming has a whole bunch of general units. So by statute, Wyoming is required to issue, I believe it's 7,250 non-resident elk tags. So the very first thing they do is they say, all right, here's our quotas. Here's the percentage that goes to non-residents of the limited entry tags. And let's say 3,000 were allocated to non-residents as limited entry tags. Well, Wyoming is required to issue enough general tags to get up to that statutory limit of, I believe it's 7,250. So in my example, they'd issue 4,250 general tags and 3,000 limited entry tags. And in the application, it's the letters GEN, first three letters of general. Well, there's a whole bunch of units that you can hunt in Wyoming if you draw the general tag. And for residents, it's just an over-the-counter. They go to the sporting goods store and they buy it. They don't even have to apply for it. For those of us non-residents, we have to apply for it. But there's some really good elk hunting in those general areas. Couple things to think about. Here in the regular draw, it takes, even with 2 points, you only have a 64, or last year, had a 64% chance of drawing that in the preference point draw with 2 points. Your odds in the random draw were 14%. Over here in the special, the more expensive draw that you pay a lot of extra money for, with 1 point you had 97% chance of drawing. And in the random part of the draw, you had a 29% chance. So even if you had 0 points and you were in the random pool, you had double the odds of drawing that general tag. Here's the beauty of the general tag. You can come and hunt with your bow September 1st through the 30th by doing nothing more than buying the archery stamp. And if you don't draw, you can come and hunt the rifle season, which each of these units have slightly different seasons, but most of them are going to be in mid-October to late October in these general units. It's really, really good. And the Insider Strategy article has, if I scroll down further, it has each of these general unit areas, what the trophy potential is, what the bull to cow ratio is, harvest success, percent public land. If you're thinking of hunting the general units, this is really, really good information that you should think about. So now that you've kind of went through the process of, all right, I'm going to apply in the regular draw, I'm going to apply as a party or by myself, one of the things you need to think about is Wyoming gives you 3 choices, but they look at everybody's first choice before they start looking at anybody's second choice. So if your first choice is filled, they're not going to look at your second and third choice until they go to all the other people behind you. The odds of drawing a second choice tag for a bull elk is just about 0. It used to be in the special draw, you could maybe pick up one of the general tags as a second choice. Not anymore. The demand has grown too high. So make sure your first choice is what you want, because that's really, it's your only real option. All right, this is where things get really good here. I'm not going to go through every bit of this, but look at the harvest, statewide harvest success rates in Wyoming. 43, 44, 42, 39, 36, 36. These are really, really impressive harvest success rates. Most states that allow as much elk hunting as Wyoming, those numbers are going to be under 20%. Wyoming does a great job of combining opportunity with keeping their quality there. So here's the piece that is super, super helpful with goHUNT. How to uncover a hidden gem in the Wyoming elk areas. That hurts to read that part, but it's in this strategy article. It's super, super helpful. Here's another really helpful part of these insider articles. How to manage your points and your expectations. I have 0 points, what can I expect? And then it goes into, all right, I've got 3 to 8 points or whatever it is. I got 9 or more, what can I expect? Really super, super helpful stuff. I want to quickly show you the other part about the Insider that is so cool. So here you see a map of Wyoming. It has all of the elk units, and when you put your cursor over it, it highlights it in whatever color. So I'm going to use Unit 124. Everybody knows Unit 124 is a top trophy unit. So I click on that, and it takes me into a snapshot overview of the unit, general size, what the trophy potential is, whole bunch of stuff about how much is public land, how much is private, what's the access, and then it just goes into great detail about, okay, with the archery hunt, here's what the success rates and what you can expect. Here's any legal weapon. Shows my draw odds because it's such high demand. I only have 1 point in Wyoming. You can see what my odds are. It's 0. So I can cross that off my list. Or you can go over here, and I do this a lot. Filtering 2.0 it's called. State is Wyoming, species is elk. So you're gonna see this map changes as I slide my bar over here. Maybe somebody says, look, I've been saving for a long time in Wyoming. If it's not a 330-inch or better elk, I'm not that interested. I mean, obviously this is no guarantee that's what you're gonna get. But what this says is you can filter by what you think, or what most people would say is a unit where you have a chance at a 330-inch elk. You slide that down a little, no, just any good 6-point, 290 inches better. Whew, the whole state becomes available. So I can search based on this criteria. I say, all right, I'm gonna apply in the special draw for my first choice, and I only have 1 point. What if my draw odds are 5% or better? Well, now you see a bunch more of these disappeared. So you can filter by so many things. And then I say, well, I want to make sure I have at least 60% public land. Okay. You can see my map is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. All right. I want harvest success rates of 30%. There you go. I kind of know where I need to apply. Now, if I was applying in, say, the regular draw rather than the special draw, maybe some of these would disappear. If I said, look, I don't need 5% odds, I need, 30% odds, well, at one point, everything is going to disappear pretty much. Well, other than these units that are pretty much all wilderness area. So I give this as an example of how the filtering system lets you quickly dial in of what I'm thinking about. All right, what's the place I want to go? Unit 60, I know it's right next to Yellowstone National Park. It's the thoroughfare. Well, it's all wilderness area, but this will give you an idea of all of the details, all the information it has about every unit, every hunt code. So there you have it, folks. This is how we use the goHUNT Insider for Wyoming. The next video we're going to do is how we do it in Arizona, how it is a very useful tool there, well, in every state. So go to gohunt.com, sign up for the Insider, use promo code Randy, and you're going to get $50 of free credit. Just absolute mad money in their gear shop. And give this a lot of thought. Don't miss the January 31st deadline. Think about this. Really try hard, because there is a possibility that you could go elk hunting in Wyoming in 2019, even if you have 0 points. Thanks for watching.